They are LA County Sheriff's deputies who have been linked to violence, both inside Men's Central Jail against inmates.
I need help.
And on the outside against their fellow deputies.
They're sheriffs? Yeah, they're sheriffs, and they're fighting downstairs.
Coming up, our exclusive KTLA investigation into the 3,000 boys.
They're entrusted with getting the bad guys, but some say a group of local law enforcement officials function like a gang themselves.
Are they holding the line or are they crossing it? Our Carolyn Costello here with a KTLA exclusive Gang Behind the Badge. Carolyn.
Micah, Cher, yeah, this is our months-long KTLA investigation. It has put the spotlight on a group of LA County Sheriff's deputies who have been linked to violence both inside Men's Central Jail against inmates and outside the jail against their fellow deputies. They call themselves the 3,000 boys, leading many to wonder, are they in fact the gang behind the badge?
I need help.
You're looking at sheriff investigators' video obtained exclusively by KTLA News. Officers are interviewing Evans Tutt, a former inmate who was housed on the 3rd floor of Men's Central Jail.
I comply with everything the deputy said. I don't want any problems because I know how the sheriff departments get down in their module.
Investigators documented the broken tooth, broken nose, bruises, contusions, and muscle damage that Tutt says he received at the hands of several sheriff's deputies.
I repeatedly got kicked and hit with flashlights and whatever the deputies can hit me with.
Tutt spent 11 days in the hospital, but deputies charged him with resisting an officer. His attorney, public defender Darian Nicole, says sheriffs wanted to make an example of Tutt.
My client had been complaining about the conditions in the jail, and they wanted to show him that it's their house and they run it.
The case against Tutt was eventually dismissed. Now he plans to file a civil suit against the sheriff's department. At least 3 of the deputies involved in Tutt's case are part of a group who call themselves the 3,000 Boys, named after the 3rd or 3,000th floor of Men's Central Jail where they're assigned. The group works hard and they play hard. As a symbol of their bond, they flash gang-like hand signs, 3 fingers for 3,000. They sport similar tattoos. One even has their number inked onto his neck. We showed their photos to attorney Michael Giannacco, whose LA County Office of Independent Review oversees sheriff misconduct issues.
The emulation or adoption of some of the signals of gang members is unsettling. I think it suggests that at least a group of individuals within the jail, deputies, seem to have lost their way.
And another case involving the 3,000 Boys lends credence to the notion that some had indeed lost their way.
They're sheriffs? Yeah, they're sheriffs, and they're fighting downstairs.
This 911 call obtained by KTLA News came from the Quiet Cannon Club in Montebello. It happened here last December. Dozens of sheriff's deputies, including ranking officers, got together for an unofficial Christmas party. After plenty of drinks, a fight broke out. Witnesses called 911.
3 of them held one guy down while another one beat him. So they're sheriff officers that are fighting? Yes.
Deputies beaten up that night filed a criminal complaint. Now, 6 deputies from the fight, including 3 in the Evans Tutt case, are facing termination. All 6 are 3,000 Boys. ACLU attorney Peter Eliasberg's group has represented scores of inmates in abuse cases at Men's Central Jail. Eliasberg hopes the 3,000 Boys Christmas Brawl will shed light on a problem of violence he's been working to expose for years.
The highest level of use of force incidents in Men's Central Jail over the last approximately 4 years occurred on the 3rd floor, the very floor that these deputies were assigned to.
This, by any measure, was unacceptable.
Sheriff spokesman Steve Whitmore concedes that the Christmas Brawl is a black mark against the department, but he insists that the recommended firing of 6 deputies in response has sent a clear message. Do you believe there were problems with unprovoked violence from deputies against inmates?
No, I do not. Do we sometimes make mistakes? Do we sometimes respond in a way that is not appropriate? The answer is regrettably yes. Do we immediately rectify it by investigating, by taking the appropriate action that needs to be taken? Absolutely.
I need help.
The 3,000 Boys Christmas Brawl incident is under review by the LA District Attorney's Office for possible criminal prosecution. The 6 deputies have been suspended without pay pending appeals. Now, in response to this incident, the Sheriff's Department has increased the frequency of rotations for deputies in Men's Central Jail to combat group allegiances from forming. Now, the deputies, their attorneys, and the union that represents them have all declined to speak with us for this report. Well, part 2 of my Gang Behind the Badge investigation continues tomorrow night with the story of another 3,000 boy whose behavior got out of hand in a Fullerton bar. That was all caught on tape.
It is a quiet afternoon at the popular Slide Bar in Fullerton. But on one busier night, the bar's surveillance cameras record club bouncer Chris Barton trying to clear the bar at closing time. Barton showed me the surveillance video as LA County Sheriff's Deputy David Ortega, with 2 other deputies, refuses to leave.
He wants to fight right here, and he spits in my face.
Ortega threatens him in the name of his 3,000 boys.
He said that he was, him and his boys from the 3,000 boys or the 3,000 block are going to take care of me. He said he was going to beat the crap out of me. He was going to leave me in a pool of my own blood, leave me there to die.
Don't miss it. Part 2 of my exclusive report airs tomorrow night right here on KTLA at 10 o'clock.
And we're hearing that this may not be the only gang within the department.
No, Micah, Cher, this story continues to develop. We are hearing more stories. Possibly this goes beyond the 3,000 boys. There may be other gangs within the department. So we'll obviously be continuing to follow it. Continues to develop.
Wow.
All right, Carolyn.
Tomorrow night.
Thank you. Last night in our special KTLA news investigation, Gang Behind the Badge, we told you about a close-knit group of LA County Sheriff's deputies who call themselves the 3,000 Boys.
They sport similar tattoos. They flash gang-like signs to show their bond to each other, among other things. Carolyn Costello here now with part 2 of the investigation. Carolyn.
Micah, Cher, as we reported last night, 6 3,000 boys are facing termination, accused of beating up their fellow deputies in a drunken brawl last year. Today, a lawsuit filed by those deputies attacked in that fight say the Sheriff's Department has encouraged an atmosphere of lawlessness and violence. Now, in part 2 of our exclusive series, we introduce you to another deputy, a so-called 3,000 boy who was involved in a barroom fight that was caught on tape. It is a tape that might provide some insight into the swagger of the gang behind the badge.
It is a quiet afternoon at the popular Slide Bar in Fullerton. But on one busier night, the bar surveillance cameras record club bouncer Chris Barton trying to clear the bar at closing time just before 2 a.m.
As you can see, everybody's leaving.
But they're not.
They're not.
And they're still drinking.
Barton shows me the surveillance video. He says here, LA County Sheriff's Deputy David Ortega, along with 2 other deputies, are refusing to leave.
He tells us that he's the LA County Sheriff's deputy, that he has the right to be here. He's a cop. It doesn't matter what we say or what the laws are.
As Barton tries to get Ortega and his friends to go home, he says Ortega gets belligerent.
He tells me he wants to fight me, and he's like, I just want you to throw the first punch. Throw the first punch. I said, no, I mean, just go home. He's like, what happens if I spit on you? He wants to fight right here. And he spits in my face.
This is the moment on surveillance when Barton tells us Deputy Ortega spits in his face. He does it 3 times. Barton says the off-duty deputy then threatens him in the name of his 3,000 boys. A group of deputies working in Men's Central Jail who flash gang-like hand signs and sport similar tattoos, who've been linked to violence against inmates and even against fellow deputies.
What was the threat he made against you?
He said that he was, him and his boys from the 3,000 boys or the 3,000 block are going to take care of me. He said he was going to beat the crap out of me. He was going to leave me in a pool of my own blood, leave me there to die.
Outside the bar, Barton says Ortega's threats continue.
That time he decides to say that he's going to shoot us. So he reaches behind his back like that, and that's when myself and another bouncer tackled him.
Luckily, Ortega did not have a gun. Barton says he was bluffing. But Fullerton police arrested the sheriff's deputy and charged him with 4 counts: assault, battery, fighting, and making a terrorist threat.
As a result of the incident here in Fullerton, Ortega was demoted in the sheriff's department. He pled no contest to one of the charges against him, served probation. Today, he is still working in Men's Central Jail.
I repeatedly got kicked and hit with flashlights and whatever the deputies can hit me with.
A year after the fight in Fullerton, Ortega was among a group of 3,000 Boys deputies who allegedly beat inmate Evans Tutt on the 3rd floor of Men's Central Jail. The deputy said Tutt was resisting. He said the attack was unprovoked.
I need help.
Chris Barton says he's shocked Ortega still has a job with the LA County Sheriff's Department. And Barton concedes he's concerned the so-called 3,000 boys may seek revenge because he came forward.
Doing this interview with us, are you afraid they might retaliate? Are you afraid for your safety?
Doing this is probably a bad idea, you know, like for my safety. It's worth it if change is brought.
An attorney who has represented David Ortega told us Mr. Ortega declined to give us a statement in connection with our report. In the past 24 hours, we have received a number of emails and phone calls from law enforcement officers and other interested parties offering more information about these so-called gang subgroups in the LA County Sheriff's Department. We will, of course, continue to follow this developing story, bring you updates in the days and weeks ahead. Micah,
wow.
Share.
A lot uncovered there.
And there's still some more of them, aren't there?
Well, that's what we're hearing. We're hearing this may go well beyond the 3,000 boys. There are other names of gangs. We are hearing other tattoos that may tie some of these groups together. Sure. So we're investigating that, and we will be bringing you more stories.
Carolyn Costello, thank you.
All right.